Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving straight into a massive, frankly unprecedented shift in how the world's largest democracy governs itself. On January 1, 2015, India made a massive pivot. They completely scrapped the Legacy Planning Commission, which was this absolute behemoth that had been directing the country's economic development for 65 years, and they replaced it with a brand new policymaking body. So you have to ask, why change a system that had been in place for so long to steer an economy of over 1.4 billion people? What does this new body actually do? Well, that is exactly what we are going to unpack today. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with number 1, transforming India's policy landscape. 2, core roles and functions. 3, key objectives and vision. 4, real-world impact, focusing on innovation. And finally, 5, hurdles and implementation challenges. Okay, let's jump right into part 1, transforming India's policy landscape. The speed of this turnaround was just staggering. Literally, out with the old, in with the new. On January 1st, 2015, the NDA government officially scrapped the traditional planning commission, and in its place, that very same year, they established a totally modernized policymaking body. They didn't just sit around drafting academic papers either. By 2016, they had already launched major grassroots initiatives, like the Atal Innovation Mission, which we'll get into a bit later. So the big takeaway here is that this wasn't just a simple rebranding. It was a rapid, ground-up overhaul of how economic planning was going to be executed. So what is this new body actually called? NITI Aayog. The acronym stands for the National Institute for Transforming India. And honestly, transforming is the absolute keyword here. It represents a complete paradigm shift. The old commission was largely about these centralized, top-down 5-year plans. NITI Aayog, on the other hand, was designed to be something entirely different, a dynamic, agile entity meant to constantly adapt and transform the nation's economic landscape. Moving along to part 2, core roles and functions. Let's decode what this organization actually does on a day-to-day basis. What's truly revolutionary here is how the government's role in planning has been completely redefined. Instead of just dictating economic plans from the capital, NITI Aayog acts as a strategic policy think tank for the government of India. It provides highly specialized strategic and technical advice. But it doesn't stop at just giving advice, right? It actively monitors and evaluates how these development programs are actually being implemented on the ground. And most importantly, it promotes something called cooperative economic federalism. Now, cooperative federalism, what does that actually mean? Well, imagine running a massive corporation where the local branch managers suddenly get a seat at the main boardroom table. That's cooperative federalism. It simply means bringing state governments directly into the policymaking process to foster structured, continuous support. Look, India is massive, and it is incredibly diverse. A one-size-fits-all policy drafted in New Delhi just might not work for a rural village in a totally different state. Cooperative federalism means shifting away from a rigid, top-down approach to a dynamic, working collaboration between the central and state governments. That brings us to Section 3, Key Objectives and Vision. Let's look at the foundational blueprint driving all of this. As you might guess, the goals are highly ambitious. Right out of the gate, the objective is to evolve a shared national development vision with the states. They're tasked with designing long-term policy and program frameworks. But they aren't working in a vacuum. They are mandated to build active partnerships with both national and international think tanks. Plus, NITI Aayog actually acts as a resolution platform, a place to iron out interdepartmental issues so development doesn't get stalled by red tape. They also maintain a state-of-the-art resource center focusing on good governance, all while placing a massive emphasis on upgrading the technology used to implement these programs. And all of those objectives are anchored by this one powerful quote from their mandate, recognizing that strong states make a strong nation. It's pretty straightforward, right? This foundational belief highlights that national success is entirely dependent on empowering the individual states. You literally cannot have a thriving, world-class national economy if the regions that make up that nation are struggling. This cooperative mindset feeds directly into their operational strategy, which relies heavily on mid-course corrections based on feedback. Think of NITI Aayog like a strategic GPS for the Indian economy. When you use a GPS, if you hit a roadblock, the system recalculates based on real-time feedback. NITI Aayog is designed to do exactly that. It designs the long-term framework, sure, but it actively uses monitoring and feedback to make innovative, mid-course corrections along the way. If a program is failing, they don't wait 5 years to change it. They pivot and correct course based on the actual data. All right, Section 4, Real-World Impact Innovation. Let's step out of the bureaucratic boardroom and look at exactly how these policies play out on the ground. To truly grasp NITI Aayog's real-world impact, We have to look at its flagship initiative, the Atal Innovation Mission, or AIM. Launched back in 2016, this initiative was designed to spark grassroots innovation and entrepreneurship across the entire country. And we're not just talking about throwing money at big tech companies. It's about fundamentally rewiring the culture from the ground up to foster creativity and real-world problem solving.
How exactly do they pull that off? Well, AIM operates across 4 distinct levels to create a complete ecosystem. Step 1 focuses on the youth by setting up adult tinkering labs right in schools to inspire kids with hands-on STEM education. Step 2 scales that up by creating adult incubation centers to provide infrastructure and funding for startups. Step 3 introduces the Adult New India Challenges, which specifically ask innovators to solve real government and societal problems. And finally, Step 4 ensures no one is left behind by establishing adult community innovation centers, which are specifically targeted at rural and underserved areas. This creates a completely integrated pipeline for the nation. It's actually brilliant. A young student gets hands-on STEM experience through an adult tinkering lab. Later in life, if they start a company, they get mentorship and infrastructure from an incubation center. If they want to tackle macro-level national issues, the New India Challenges give them specific problem statements to solve. And crucially, if they happen to live in an underserved community, the community innovation centers provide a platform so their zip code doesn't limit their potential. It is a fully comprehensive approach to upgrading the nation's capabilities. Finally, Section 5, Hurdles and Implementation Challenges. Time for a quick reality check.
Because, let's be real, no massive policy shift, no matter how clever the design, is perfectly smooth. Despite the structural brilliance and the early successes of initiatives like AIM, some really serious hurdles remain. First, ensuring sustained support and funding for startups is incredibly difficult. Getting a startup off the ground is one thing, but keeping it alive is a whole different beast. Second, encouraging a culture of innovation in stubborn traditional legacy industries is a massive uphill battle. Change is just hard when things have been done a certain way for generations. And third, perhaps the biggest challenge for a country as vast as India is addressing regional disparities in access to resources. Ensuring rural areas actually get the same opportunities as the megacities is a monumental task. This creates a continuous, really high-stakes tension. On one side, you have this intense drive for cutting-edge innovation, pushing for state-of-the-art tech upgrades and global competitiveness. But on the other side, you have the heavy anchor of regional disparities. The challenge is pushing the whole country forward without leaving underserved traditional communities behind. It's a very delicate balancing act that requires constant attention and, just like we talked about earlier, a whole lot of mid-course corrections.
So, the crucial thought we are left with is this. Ultimately, the long-term success of this entire new policy landscape hinges on inclusive growth. Can NITI Aayog successfully bridge the gap between high-tech innovation and the everyday realities of underserved rural communities to truly transform India? It is a massive undertaking, shifting from centralized planning to dynamic, cooperative federalism. And honestly, it leaves us with a fascinating global question. Is this bottom-up, feedback-driven model the ultimate future of how massive democracies must be governed? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope this helped you visualize the real mechanics behind this historic policy shift.